What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. You looked for it, and lo and behold, you found it. You came to the right place. This is the podcast where we dive into the deepest, darkest, murkiest waters with a wide array of legendary, that's right, legendary guests. I am, of course, your bastard of ceremonies, the number one scumbag, Rex Ruger. That's Rex with 3 X's. Count them. And I earned every single one of those X's. You might also know me as AKA the King of Sleaze, AKA the Hair Metal High Priest, AKA the man with the golden pipes and the velvet tongue, ladies. And most importantly, you know me as AKA Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. That's right. Take a look. There's the old man hanging on the wall, looking down on his son and beaming with pride. That's right. Just spoke to my lawyers today. Everything is progressing along nicely, and pretty soon we will have conclusive proof that that man right there is indeed my father. That's right. I am the son of glam, the front man for the band. Got a million fans. Just smoked a few grams. Always going out with a bang. I'm your ice cream man, Mr. Wop Bop Loo Bop Wop Bam Bam. Hot damn Shazam. Woo! And I'm feeling good. Coming to you as always from the Pink Pussycat Lounge. And as always, I'm joined by my silent host back there, Keith Hernandez. You know him as the great first baseman of the New York Mets, like I always say, number 17 in your program, number 1 in your hearts. And as I pound my chest, I'm reminded that I'm rocking the Soulfly shirt. Big props to Max Cavalera and the boys. And I'm going to relieve Keith. Looks like he was holding my Pepsi here, which usually he's holding my Coke. Little inside joke for people that know the legend, the lore of one Keith Hernandez. Little product placement here for you. If you're taking a look at my luscious locks and you're saying, Rex, how the hell do I get a head of hair like that? Right there, kids. And as always, I like to remind people, spray responsibly. I am, of course, one of the hardest working men in show business. I used to say the hardest working man in show business, but my guest today might prove me wrong. And before I get him in here, let me give myself a look. You know what? The more I look for a bad side, the more all I can see is good. Every side's a good side. Sometimes Keith Hernandez back there will join in on the bongos or add a little color commentary, but not very often. I also will remind you that this is the No Frills podcast. You don't get any frills. You notice there's no bells and whistles on here. We just dive right in. No frills, because you get plenty of thrills. And the thrill is looking at moi. And you know what? I'm thinking maybe my guest today might possibly be a good candidate for Love Sword. My, of course, passion project. My number 1 glam sleaze band that I currently am the front man of. And of course, as you all know, I am involved in numerous musical endeavors up and down the Eastern Seaboard and around the tri-state New York area. I'm a busy man. Although this guy that I'm having in here today might out-busy the king of busy. We will see. We will talk to him about that, along with numerous other things, as soon as we can get him in here. And I'll tell you, man, this guy is a hard worker, man. I got to give him props. Anybody that's going to work that hard, I salute him. There he is ringing my doorbell right now, kids. So let's get our guest in here. Let's get it cracking here on Pod Scum. Kevin Hufnagel, how are you?
How you doing?
Good, good. Hey, you know what? I was just telling my audience that I wasn't really sure to say Kevin Hufnagel of the band, because I'm looking on your Wikipedia, and you got to be the hardest working man in show business. Jesus Christ, you're in all kinds of shit.
Yeah, like to stay busy. Yeah, no, but I've just been fortunate to meet so many, just I don't know, awesome other musicians, and just you have to start all these different, musical adventures with them. So.
Are you the kind of person, because it fascinates me, are you the kind of person that's just able to always just be able to tap into your creative side and you just always feel creatively inspired, or do you really have to dig deep sometimes? Or does it just kind of just spilling out of you and you've just got to always be involved in these projects? Must be that great to be that creatively inspired a lot.
I mean, I'm definitely, not always inspired. I feel like probably in the more, obviously with the more different projects I'm involved with, it's easier to stay inspired because, I think for a long time, like for instance, throughout my 20s, I had pretty much just the band DYSRHYTHMIA was kind of my main musical outlet. It's still kind of, one of my, primary focuses. So there was a period of time where that was kind of my main focus. So, when I wasn't, when I was having problems with inspiration with that band, I felt a little bit more worried, like, why aren't I inspired? Like, when's it going to come back? Although the other members of that band, always throw in ideas and songs too, so that's good. I'm not always the main songwriter, but I think it's easier now to kind of stay inspired because I have, if something's kind of not happening with one project, I'll just work on some other project. It's all pretty musically different. So, maybe sometimes I don't feel like playing instrumental prog tech metal. So I'll just work on some ambient guitar music instead. That'll be more inspiring maybe. So
what was the impetus in starting a band like DYSRHYTHMIA? I should know that word because I work in healthcare. God damn it, I fucked that up. But what was the impetus behind starting a band where it is just instrumental and there is no singer? Is it just because lead singers are just a huge pain in the ass?
I work with more like lead singers now. Especially in the past 10 to 15 years, I've actually playing bands with singers now, but for a long time it was just instrumental music. And I mean, finding a good singer is definitely like the hardest thing to find. But no, I've always liked instrumental music a lot. I like how you can really it can mean a lot of different things. I mean, like, lyrics can be very ambiguous too and stuff. But especially with instrumental music, it's so open to interpretation. And I was really into kind of having an instrumental trio. Just 3 people, bass, drums. But not one of these things where like someone's like, there's like the star of the band, like so. I want everyone to be a kind of like equal, everyone's parts kind of working together. So that was kind of my that's kind of always what I knew what I want. It's always kind of I knew pretty clearly what I wanted to be, and it's kind of stayed that way. I mean, it's grown and turned into something else entirely, but
So I was reading today about the new band, and I want to make sure that I get the pronunciation right. Is it VELDUNE? Okay. And now, some interesting quotes that I saw on an article I was reading on a couple of rock websites, where influences of Chris Isaac and Concrete Blonde. So with that being said, are you one of these guys who is, because obviously a lot of people certainly know you for the death metal band GORGUTS. Do you find yourself having to have a departure from certain musical styles and venture out? Does that make you feel more fulfilled to not do everything in the same genre, in the same vein?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, pretty early on, I've always liked, all kinds of music. I guess I credit that to a couple things. Like my mom, was really into music and had a pretty diverse record collection. So I'd always hear all different kinds of music around the house, even from a young age.
Yeah, me too.
And then even my earliest guitar teachers, I started playing guitar when I was 10. And, a lot of my early guitar teachers were also luckily like pretty open-minded musically. And they, I like metal too, from a pretty young age, but they'd be like, well, check out this classical guitar piece, or just, so I've always kind of had a diverse interest and taste in music. And it definitely can't, it's easy to burn out on death metal,
I can see that for sure.
And to make your death metal more interesting, you got to be listening to some other kinds of music. Otherwise you're just going to sound generic,
Now, what about VAURA?
That's a band that's really kind of like gone in a lot of different directions in the past 10 years. It's kind of started more as like a, kind of more of like a, rock, more or less kind of band. And then the last record we put out earlier this year is pretty anti-rock, it's like pretty abstract. That was kind of our idea, I think, kind of early on when I met Josh, the singer guitarist, kind of the main songwriter. We kind of talked pretty early on about how it would be really interesting to have, I guess maybe one of our inspirations was a band like Ulver, for instance, or something where you kind of never knew where they were heading next, so I think that's kind of what VAURA is.
Well, I'm interested in you know, I have a lot of people from you know, the metal community on here, and obviously until I looked at your Wikipedia page, I, you know, obviously blindly, you know, I mean, had thought that GORGUTS, and you know, GORGUTS is a band that you are in, but you know, I was very you know, narrow-sighted and opened my eyes to all the other things that you do. But speaking specifically to GORGUTS, how do you get tied up with GORGUTS? How do you meet Luke? You know, what's your path that brings you to that band?
So yeah, I was already a GORGUTS fan, you know, before I met Luke, and yeah, hugely into the album Obscura. That was kind of the one that kind of got me into the band. Although I remember being a freshman in high school, kind of around the time Consider Dead came out, and a friend of mine playing me that record when it came out at the time, and mainly because he thought I would like the acoustic guitar intro on the record. Yeah, this is cool. But I wasn't as into like death metal as a genre back when I was that young.
Yeah,
as much as I would become later, you know. So I kind of, you know, it's like that's cool, and I kind of forgot about the band until Obscura came out, and I was like, holy shit, this band's really interesting. And anyway, so yeah, years later, I remember DYSRHYTHMIA was on tour, and I remember we were in Kansas, and we had just played the show, and we were crashing at somebody's house that was letting us crash, and I go to check MySpace at the time, you know, this is 2008, and there's a message from Luke in my inbox, and he introduces himself, and he's like, I'm thinking about reforming GORGUTS. You want to be the guitar player? I was like, what? Is this a joke? You know? And then he mentioned too that he wanted Colin, my bandmate, DYSRHYTHMIA, to play bass as well.
Yeah.
So I ran downstairs and I was like, Colin, look at this message. You think this is real? You know? And it was, you know, and yeah, so we wrote it back, you know, right away. And then I remember by the end of 2008, he had already started sending some songs, you know, to start working on for Colored Sands. So.
Now, what's your creative process like when you do GORGUTS? Is it Luke kind of takes the reins, or is it more of a collaborative effort? Like how much input? You know, because obviously GORGUTS is seen as certainly Luke's band, but you know, is he open to, you know, allowing everybody else in the band input into the material?
Definitely. I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, he kind of writes sort of the foundation,
right,
of, you know, most of the material, and then we're free to kind of write our own parts to it, because usually the guitars and the bass, like everything's kind of doing something kind of independent from the other instruments. So that's fun. You know, I really enjoy working that way, where he sends a song and it's got a solid foundation and structure, and you know, it sounds killer, and I'm like, cool, all I have to do is kind of dress this up and add my own little spice to it and play some solos here and there. But there are 2 songs on Colored Sands where he let Colin and I each write a song.
Okay.
So so there's 2 songs that, you know, one I wrote, one Colin wrote, where Luke kind of, you know, then he wrote his parts to our song, you know,
right.
Flip roles there. But yeah, so no, it's pretty fulfilling. You know, he hardly ever asks us to change anything. So
right. So when he comes to you with the ideas, or you know, the infrastructure on what he wants to do on Pleiad's Dust, did you find that interesting, where essentially he does an EP with a 33-minute song where it's the whole album is essentially one song divided up into movements? I mean, that's a pretty creative, ambitious endeavor in the death metal world.
Yeah. No, yeah, it was fun to work on, and it I don't know. I felt like it was kind of actually written fairly quickly. And that whole record came together like so much faster than Colored Sands.
Yeah.
But
that's a pretty unorthodox approach, though, right? Like, do you think you know? Do you have any reservations on it? You know, that you kept to yourself, like, where you like, you know, this is kind of, you know, are the death metal kids or the metal kids going to get this, like a 33-minute song? I mean, you know, were you worried about any pushback from the fans?
Not really, no. Which is nice.
It worked. It certainly worked. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think GORGUTS fans in general are pretty open-minded.
Yeah,
you know? I wasn't too worried, and yeah, it ended up being pretty well received, it seemed, in general. So.
And what is it about GORGUTS specifically? Because you know, you said, obviously, you mentioned that you have a very eclectic taste, and you know, you obviously, you expressed that you like metal, but what was it about specifically GORGUTS that made you kind of like respond the way you did to Luke's message? I mean, you said you had already been a fan, but what is it that you feel that separates GORGUTS from, your garden variety, death metal band?
Like I said, when I heard Obscura, I thought that was like a really new direction for death metal.
Yeah.
And, that came out in '98, I believe. So, mid '90s, in my opinion, was a pretty low time for metal in general.
Yeah, it was.
So I'm really desperate for something metal that blew me away again. Like I felt like it did when I heard records from the late '80s. And
stuff. Yeah, I get what you're saying there. Yeah.
And to me, it was just the unorthodox approach to guitar. Like that album doesn't have any. It's totally free of like death metal cliches as far as the guitar playing goes.
Right.
I just thought the arrangements of the songs were really interesting. It was, pretty avant-garde for its time. So I found that really intriguing. Yeah.
And you also do some producing, right? Do you produce a lot of the bands that you're involved in?
Produce? What do you mean exactly by producing?
Well, they've got you down on your, and of course I have to believe it, Kevin, because it's on the internet, for God's sakes, right? I mean, but they do have you cited on your page, maybe unbeknownst to you, as a guitarist and a producer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess producer, usually I guess that just means, I mean, it's funny, like when I think of producers, I think of, someone who kind of like directs a band.
Right, just does that, right.
Yeah, which is, I feel like I've only ever worked with an actual producer once in my life on one particular record.
Okay.
I feel like every other time it's been more like the recording engineer is just there to record the record and mix it, and sometimes they might have like some suggestions, which I always welcome. I appreciate like some outside ears telling me like maybe tweak that guitar tone or maybe try this idea. I'm always open to that kind of stuff.
Now, obviously, given that there's been a huge shift in the way the music business works nowadays, talk to me a little bit about how that's affected you in your particular endeavors. Obviously, album sales are not what they used to be. The music business has changed. A lot of it's become digital. There's not as much of a physical product anymore as far as, CDs and things of that nature. How do you find being a musician yourself and jumping onto people's projects and being involved in so many things? How have the changes affected you personally?
Yeah, it's really hard right now. It's kind of confusing to know what to do with a record after.
Yeah, sure. And I'm just talking about that with someone last night. It's like, you could put out the greatest album in the world, and then you're standing here with this work, and you can't fucking give it away. I mean,
I know. It's hard. It's really hard to get it in people's ears these days.
Yeah. People
have no attention span. There's too much coming out. Yeah, we've heard it all before in the past couple of years, probably in every interview about this.
Sure.
It's I don't know, man. I have to just keep reminding myself that I'm just making this music for myself first and foremost. Like I can't be too worried about how many people hear it.
Right.
But it is a little it's discouraging when you sink a lot of money into recording a record and you don't even make 1/4 of it back.
I know. It's pretty crazy. It's very disheartening to hear musicians. A lot of them who have been on here are people that I've been fans of for years and years. And I guess me not being in the music business, there's like a certain, a sense of me that's kind of naive, like where I think, and I've said this before, you've been listening to somebody for, 25, 30 years, and then you see them come on a podcast and you think, irregardless of what genre they play in, hey, this person has to be okay. And then I'm hearing people taking day jobs, and it's just, not making any money, and it's disheartening to hear.
Yeah, I feel fortunate in that at least I am like, as far as like sort of my day job kind of job. It's teaching guitar, and that's kind of what it's mainly been, especially since the pandemic. And it's great, actually. So I feel lucky that at least through my bands and through putting out music all these years and writing music, I have a pretty decent roster of guitar students, because most of them probably are familiar with me through my own music,
Right.
So that's good. I think that's the thing you have to do if you're a musician these days. It's just find other ways to kind of, it's not going to be, even touring right now is, that used to be the way everyone makes money, I guess. But that's really rough right now.
Well, that actually brings me to what I was going to bring up. So how do you, at this stage of your life, and I don't know specifically like what your personal life is like, but how much touring do you do right now, like with these bands, and like what kind of a tour schedule do you keep? Like, are you somebody that is interested in going out for weeks or months at a time, or doing more isolated dates? How do you approach going out and touring live now?
Yeah, it's definitely different than it used to be. Yeah, in my 20s, especially when DYSRHYTHMIA was kind of my only band.
Yeah,
that's when we toured the most. We would tour like 4 or 5 times a year.
Yeah,
usually for a month. That was great. That was fun. That was a lot of great times and life experience. These days, as you get older, you get a little bit choosier about what you
do. You sure do. I find as I get older, I want to leave the house less and less.
Me too. I think that's normal. In the beginning, you're down to drive 12 hours to play for $5, just for the experience and just.
You're young and you're full of piss and vinegar, and the world is your oyster, so to speak, and you're you're out to conquer everything, and.
Yeah, but obviously, and as everyone gets older, the responsibilities start getting.
Tell me about it.
Money becomes more of a concern, all those things. So that's the other thing. You have to consider your bandmates and the people who play music with too. It's like they can't always go out maybe as much as you want to. So there's always some compromise there. Right now I'm not very there's not much touring happening. Although I'm ready to do it again. It's just nothing, no opportunities really right now. I guess right now I feel like all the different bands are kind of in writing mode for the most part right now, and touring's kind of even just playing like local live shows can kind of really interrupt the flow of sort of working on new material and getting that, especially for DYSRHYTHMIA. It takes us a long time to kind of just get our songs together. Is kind of
where you want them, right?
It's just kind of intricate music, so it takes a lot of rehearsing and putting our heads together to get those songs tight. So. This year we've only been working on new stuff and rehearsing. There hasn't been any live shows, but next year hopefully the record will come out. Probably we're pretty close to having a full record written, and then we'll definitely start playing shows again.
Now, obviously, in these times of COVID, I'm curious to ask you, first of all, how has your health fared over these last couple of years? Have you had any run-ins with COVID? You or your loved ones? Have you stayed pretty healthy?
Knock on wood, I have not gotten it yet.
Okay, that's a good thing.
Yeah, neither have either of my parents. My brother got it.
Are you a vaccine / booster guy?
Yeah, I did all that.
Okay.
And was as careful as I could be. But I feel a little more relaxed now. It seems like.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I work in healthcare, so I'm a nurse as a day job. So, I was bound to get it just because I'm in that environment all the time, and I have. But thankfully, I didn't get severe cases. It more just felt just like slightly exaggerated cold symptoms. So I mean, so I find, I'm glad to hear that that you fared well during it, and you've been able to maintain your health and not have any run-ins with it. I hope that continues for you. So I find Luke to be an interesting guy. Obviously, we haven't had anything since 2016's the aforementioned Pleiades Dust. Do you hear from Luke? I'm sure that a lot of my diehard metal fans who listen to this will certainly want to know. Has he reached out to you? It's been 6 years now. GORGUTS fans may be wondering, will there be new music coming? Has Luke hinted about any new music coming? And anything in the works in the GORGUTS camp?
I really can't say anything too definitive, really, because all I can tell you is I've been in touch with Luke over the years. I mean, he just wrote me about a month ago. It was my birthday, so he said happy birthday. He checks in. We correspond, get on Zoom every once in a while. But as far as new material with the band, he keeps telling us, it's coming.
It's coming.
All I can say is I think he's just he's got a different way of working. He takes a lot more time to. I think he has other things going on in his life that are more of a priority right now. Honestly, probably. I don't want to.
And I think GORGUTS fans have come to expect that out of Luke too. That he kind of marches to the beat of his own drum, and I think that's probably what GORGUTS fans really love about him, because he doesn't seem like one of these kind of guys where it's like, okay, it's been 2 years, time to put out an album. You know,
not at all. Yeah.
You know, he's kind of running. He's kind of running to the beat of his own drum, so to speak.
Totally, but as soon as he sends anything over, I'm ready, because I can't wait to see new material. I feel like we still have there's a lot of still places we can go with musically, I think, with that band.
So you as a guitar player, and I'm sure this is probably, public knowledge out there, and I hate to ask the dreaded influence question, so I'll try to word it a little differently. Who are some guys whose guitar playing really makes you stand up and pay attention and notice? Like just some guys whose tone or playing or, the texture of their playing that you really love and that you're a fan of?
What's kind of cool about teaching guitars, some of my students have been either kind of turn me on to some players I've never heard of before, or kind of making me appreciate some people that I've always liked but never maybe considered influencers or influences or listened to that deeply. For instance, like Eric Johnson, the guitar player Eric Johnson.
Oh yes,
yeah. I don't love all his music, but as a guitar player, I really gotten into his style and his way of playing guitar. Yeah. Recently. But as far as initial inspirations were people like George Lynch. Actually, I always kind of credit him as one of my first influences.
Giving the big Dawkins shout out. I love it. Yeah.
I probably do that in every interview, but he really was I think one of the first guitar players that I blew my mind. And what's cool about him is I feel like I still find him a very interesting player.
Yeah,
he doesn't really rest on his laurels of being like this '80s guy. He kind of tries a lot of other kinds of music too.
Well, I think, speaking to your point about being an '80s guy, I think what was unfortunate that happened to a lot of those guys back then, and I've made mention of this before. I think a lot of those guys sometimes, because the '80s the 80s just seemed to be one of those eras where it was, more style over substance. So I think a lot of those guys didn't get credit for being the great players that they were, because, it was so much about hairspray and leather pants and, like the partying life and, the life on the road and the debauchery of it all. But, after the dust has settled, a lot of these guys that are still here, you realize wow, they're really great players though.
Oh, all those guys. Warren DeMartini from Rat.
Yeah.
Jakey Lee, I love. I think he's one of my favorites, actually. I appreciate Jakey Lee.
Yeah.
He's just really he was just a really interesting player. He had all these little quirks about him that made him really different than a lot of those other guys. But then I also, outside of metal, of course, I have all my jazz and classical influences, and I love bands like My Bloody Valentine, kind of the real wall of noise, kind of shoegazy, kind of more textural guitar playing kind of stuff.
Well, it's too late, Kevin, because I've already got you dead to rights, man. You dropped a Dawkins reference right out of the gate. So you've opened up that Pandora's box now. People know that Kevin Hufnagel is a closet 80s metal fan.
That's no secret. I talk about that all the time.
Listen, man, there was some great music that came out of that time, though, man. Really great music and just great hook-driven songs. A lot of it was very frivolous because, as I mentioned, a lot of it was about partying and chicks and drinking, and a lot of the lyrical content was, a little asinine at times, but.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think when I was especially when I was a kid, I didn't really ever pay attention to the lyrics. That's
probably a good thing.
On the guitar playing, that the dumb lyrics didn't even.
Yeah.
Probably they were so dumb they just went one ear and not the other. I was just always listening to the guitar playing.
So talk to me a little bit about this. You got to be pretty excited about this VELDUNE album, and talk to me a little bit about the guys that are working on it with you. And while you're doing that, I want to get the quote out here that I found very interesting, that I took a picture of it and saved it on my phone. But so Jamie had said, well, when you guys began to culminate the idea for the music, he told you to imagine a cinematic version of your younger selves cruising down back roads. Is this true?
Yeah. So Jamie's female.
Oh, okay. So see that? Slap my own hand for being so goddamn narrow-minded. I automatically just think you were in a band with a bunch of guys.
Nope.
Shame on me for not doing my homework. I'm, my apologies to, I'm sure, the very lovely Jamie. So barreling down the road, I'm down black asphalt, hair blowing in the wind, high as a fucking kite. That part's important to me. So what does that sound like? You know what I mean? Like when you're creating that album, what does that sound like? Did you capture that on the VELDUNE album?
I think so. Yeah. So Jamie is someone I was already playing music with, and another band called Sabbath Assembly, and that band ended back in 2019. But we enjoyed working on music so much together. Like, let's just keep going and call it something else and get some new members. And so that's what VELDUNE is. And yeah, we wanted to kind of try some different things stylistically that we hadn't tried before. And I think she sent me speaking of Chris Isaak, I think she sent me a Chris Isaak song.
Yeah.
I was already familiar with them. I've heard songs here and there over the years.
Yeah.
And I always liked them, but never really like dove that deep into any of his records. They sent me this one song, and I was like, she's like, can you write something kind of like inspired by this? And I was like, oh yeah, this is a great song. So I did, and then that kind of set us off in this whole sort of twangy, deserty sort of direction, which has been super fun to write.
It was described on Decibel Magazine as for fans of, and I don't even know. You know what? The thing that pisses me off sometimes, man, before I get to the actual quote, is does it drive you crazy sometimes that everything has to be put into such a specific, neat little box? I've talked about this on here before, where there's got to be so many genres and subgenres, and everything's got to have a label on it rather than just being. I get so many guys on here who just say, you know what, I'm in a rock band, but the quote on the Decibel site was, for fans of, I want to get this right, dark wave and goth.
Yeah, that I don't think that's not what the band makes me think of. I listen to plenty of dark wave and goth, I guess.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't use that to describe us, but it is dark. It is moody. I could see people maybe that like that kind of stuff, like in our band.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing about me personally, is like, no matter what kind of music I'm making, there's always a certain moodiness to it,
right?
Because that's just the way I write, and that's kind of just what I like to hear, or just the way I sort of feel a lot when I'm writing music. It's kind of moody. So is it easy for you to switch gears,
as far as like if you're honed in on saying, say like you're doing stuff in the VELDUNE vein, is it easy for you to switch gears and go into playing some like extreme metal, or are you one of these kind of guys who, I mean, obviously you're somebody who doesn't mind being involved in multiple projects, but when you're involved in a project, does it have a lot of your attention, or are you able to switch gears really easily? Like if Luke were to call you tomorrow and say, hey, check this stuff out, are you able to kind of decompartmentalize and say, okay, I'm going to do my thing here, and then I'm going to do some GORGUTS stuff over here?
I can, I can, if I got time during the day or at night to kind of work on music. I can kind of, start with one of my projects and get some work done, and then maybe hit a wall, or just kind of finish whatever I started. And then, I can kind of jump around in one day, work on a couple of different projects, and it keeps me from getting bored with any of them, because they're all different from each other. I don't really have I kind of like to multitask that way. And
now where do you get the impetus for a lot of the material, as far as like, do you tap into, like, what's your creative process like? Do you have a certain room that you go to? Do you have to set a certain mood? What gets you inspired? I mean, like, what's your own specific process like?
I think I am kind of seasonally. I am kind of inspired by seasons, I think.
Okay.
Like, for instance, it's fall now, and usually every fall I feel I get really into playing acoustic guitar again. I write a lot of just sort of autumnal acoustic finger style.
It fits the time of year. It fits.
Yeah, I'm just inspired by sort of the the leaves changing and stuff. What was I gonna say? Oh, but
what kind of music pours out of you when you're up to your waist in fucking snow?
I don't like winter as much anymore as I used to.
No, me neither.
No, but I do think I get a lot done in the winter because it's cold and I'm just all the time. But my creative, I don't know, things that as far as like what gets me kind of inspired right now, or lately it's been not starting my ideas on guitar, even though that's my main instrument. It's kind of the only instrument I can play, really. But I've been working with writing drum ideas mainly.
Really?
Yeah, I use this program called Guitar Pro, which is a lot of guitar players use it. It's kind of just for tabbing out riffs or whatever. But you can, it comes with all these virtual instruments. You can write drum parts in Guitar Pro.
Amazing what you can do nowadays. I know, it's crazy. Cool. People are making whole albums on their laptops. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So I've been having a lot of fun just kind of writing drum ideas first. And I really don't know anything about playing drums. I'm learning pretty quickly kind of what's possible for a drummer to play.
Right.
In the beginning, I was kind of writing stuff that I wasn't thinking at all about.
Right.
Kind of what a drummer can do with 2 hands and 2 feet. Anyway, that's been kind of a cool way to work. I've also been starting with bass ideas first instead of guitar. Things like that have kind of been inspiring me lately. Like not starting song ideas with guitar.
And what about like any external factors? Like if you're going to sit down and write music, do you draw? Now you mentioned like the seasons, but are you somebody that maybe sees something on the news or sees something in the newspaper or sees something in a movie? Do you ever draw inspiration from like media at all?
I think so. Yeah, I definitely. I mean, I always there's one song I can think of in particular. It's one of my solo pieces that I wrote immediately after finishing this documentary. It was totally inspired by the way I felt when this documentary was over, and the song came out like it was like no effort, just like came out.
Yeah.
It's this movie called The Bridge.
Okay.
It's about the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge and like the amount of suicides that.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a very dark film. It really put me in a dark headspace when it was over. I had my guitar right there, and so I wrote the song and I just called it The Bridge. But yeah, films definitely inspire me.
What did you learn from the Golden Gate Bridge film? How many people have actually taken the plunge off of that goddamn thing?
I don't remember exact numbers. I mean, I hadn't seen this. I mean, I saw this movie like a long time ago, so I don't remember.
Is that really the way to punch out of this world, though, man? Like, is that the way you'd want to do it? I wouldn't want to do it at all, I'm saying, man. But jumping off a bridge just fucking like, I mean, first of all, is it a guarantee when you jump off the Golden Gate that you're certainly going to die?
It's not. There's a, in the film, there's a survivor. And to me, drowning is one of the most scariest things.
That's terrifying. Yeah, I'm not a great swimmer, so it probably would kill me. But there would certainly be that time in the water. You know what I mean? Like where you'd be struggling, and
Yeah. So
I don't think any of them are very pleasant thoughts. I mean, but so I mentioned technology, and we were talking about the Guitar Pro and stuff like that. You like the effect that technology has had on music?
Overall, well, yes and no. I enjoy how easy it is to record myself at home now. All those things. Composing with these programs like Guitar Pro is great. The thing I don't like is obviously how sterile a lot of music sounds these days.
Yeah.
And how there's kind of really nobody's using, at least in mainstream pop, I guess it seems. Nobody's really using real instruments anymore in any of their sons.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm interested to get your take, and I imagine it'll still be topical by the time I get your episode up. But right now, there seems to be a big thing on social media between Sebastian Bach, of course, the ex-singer for Skid Row, and he seems to be taking umbrage with the band Falling in Reverse, because apparently they had some kind of technical difficulty at their show, and they were having problems because the laptops weren't working. And obviously Sebastian was, as a rock and roll purist, it's kind of saying like, well, hey, you know what I mean? Like, that's, first of all, that isn't even real rock and roll. You're relying on fucking laptops, So, I mean, where do you stand on something like that? Like where people are using it in the live setting and leaning on it heavily like that?
Yeah. Well, even bands like Kiss, are got the
I know. They've been taking a whipping too in the social media. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it just depends on what kind of music you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of like, I can see, if you're like an industrial band or something that has a lot of electronics in their music. I mean, using backing tracks is nothing new, but I just wouldn't ever want to be in a band where I totally had to rely on a laptop for my show.
I know. I know. I mean, I think that's the very the definition of how you described, music becoming sterile. I mean, like,
yeah. I especially hate the use of auto tune on everything now and stuff.
Yeah,
It's not like an old man thing to complain about, but it just doesn't have. I don't get any. You don't get any feeling from it.
Right. Well, like a band like Kiss, being that you brought them up though, like, do they get a pass because they've reached legend status, and are they allowed to, because they can't replicate what they did 35, 40 years ago? Are they allowed to get away with it? Like, would you rather go to the show and see like the live experience, warts and all, so to speak, or would you rather go there and see a great Kiss performance and let them use whatever they need to use? Where do you stand on that?
I guess the thing is, if you're one of these bands where you have like a whole show like Kiss does,
right?
People are going more just for the spectacle, I guess, of it.
I think so too. Yeah,
they know that, and it's the same thing as going to see something probably like Britney Spears or
something,
or Madonna. Where although I think Madonna, I think she would sing for real in her shows, but it's not a thing where you're going. It's like a whole production and they're dancing and all this stuff. So you're probably not focused on the musicianship.
Right. A lot of it's like going to see Elvis back in the day, even towards the end of his career when he was tripping over words and couldn't remember lyrics to his own songs. But you go for the pageantry, you go for the rhinestone suits and the entrance and the pageantry, I mean, and all that stuff that comes with seeing the spectacle that is Elvis, I mean. I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think what you hit on a good point right there. You're going to see a Kiss performance. I don't think Kiss would ever be accused of being the greatest musicians and greatest live band anyway, even 40 years ago. I mean,
that's why I give props to a band like Iron Maiden, for instance.
Yeah.
I don't think they're using any backing tracks. They're still out there doing it for real. So
yeah. So it can be done. It can be done.
It can be done. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't get why these huge bands like Kiss don't just retire. I mean, you have enough already. I don't know. I would just, if I was them, I just want to like chill at home. I wouldn't. Really
I think you and the rest of the world are wondering the same thing. Especially, does it become a little bit laughable though, man? Like when you're on a 4 or 5 year, farewell tour. All right, goodbye already. I mean, and Kiss have notoriously done this before, gone on farewell tours.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of becomes a little bit much after a while, right? And in 5 years from now, man, someone's going to fucking offer them a ridiculous amount of money and they'll be back. Motley Crue said that they were going to retire and they're already booking tour plans for next year. So,
yeah, they're a pretty sad case these days.
Yeah, they took a real hellacious whooping on social media. I mean, Vince, I mean, at one point he was using a teleprompter to remember lyrics and he's leaning heavily on the audience to sing a lot of lyrics. And, they famously took a whipping where, I don't know if you saw, but there was a clip on YouTube, like where, Tommy's off of his stool and he's over there talking to his drum tech. And the next song starts and is cued in with the, and he's not even behind the kit.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you even say to it as a musician, right? I mean, and a lot of people probably, in the audience don't pick up on it though, especially if you're not a classically trained musician, you don't know like what to look for. But I'm sure there are people in the audience who say, see, they're fucking baffling us, they're.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess when I go out to see live music, I don't go to arena shows hardly ever. I mean, I'm pretty much always just seeing small bands and small clubs,
I tend to too. Yeah, I tend to too. So are there any young bands out there right now, who are flying the flag, for rock and roll in any genre who have really caught your ear?
Man, I always feel like I space out on these kinds of questions.
That's all right. I do too. I tend to be one of those guys who gets like stuck in a time warp and just always lean on my old standards.
Yeah, no, but there's definitely, I mean, I'm always still looking for new music. And I do think music's gotten better again. Over the past 10 years than it was in like the late 90s and 2000s.
It's gotten better. Nobody can make any goddamn money off of it.
There's just too much, that's the thing is like, it's too easy also for people to just record at home and put it out themselves and put it on Spotify immediately. It's so oversaturated, but if you dig hard enough, you can still find some good stuff. There's definitely a lot of, I mean, I guess first thing that comes to mind is just there's definitely some younger guitar players that I think are really great that are doing really cool, new and interesting things. And they're pretty obscure right now. But there's this guitar player named Ryan Miller in Portland, Oregon, who's just just incredibly unique, amazing player. Actually, I live with a great guitar player named Sally Gates.
Okay.
There's a lot of I'm really impressed by like sort of the younger generation of guitar players right now.
Yeah. And what do you think about like what do you think about these bands in the heavy metal world? And you know, obviously we mentioned Kiss earlier. You know, they were doing it very early in their career with makeup or whatever. But like, what do you think about heavy metal bands or bands in any genre that use, you know, we were talking about like, you know, a performance and a spectacle, like say like a band like Slipknot. Do you like what a band like Slipknot does with the masks and the theatrics, or do you just like your music kind of stripped down? Just see a band come out there. You know, are you somebody that kind of appreciates when a band uses, you know, shtick to kind of, you know?
Not really. I really don't.
Yeah, not your thing.
I mean, I love, for instance, King Diamond and stuff, but
yeah,
that was really cool. I saw King Diamond a couple years ago, and he had the whole stage show and did all that. Yeah. I think, and that was awesome. No, it is cool sometimes to see. Like, I respect when people put that much effort into something like that, besides just playing the music.
Yeah,
I have respect for that, but it's nothing I've ever wanted to do with any of my own projects, really.
So we won't see a Kevin Hufnagel band where you're painted up or wearing a clown mask at any point in time.
I don't think so.
Okay, fair enough. So, I want to ask, as a guitar player, and I'm sure people that are other guitar players, you know, would certainly be interested on your take on this. Like, what's your go-to guitar, acoustic and electric? You know, do you have a brand, you know, that you find that resonates with you?
I'm not one of these people that's like loyal to any one particular brand, you know.
Okay.
Maybe I would be if I was endorsed by anybody, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of different kinds of guitars for different reasons, you know, for different tones, for the different projects. But one of my favorite guitars is one of my oldest guitars. It's this just a Takamine acoustic guitar. I bought it for like $400 in the 90s, early 90s, and I love it. I still use it on recordings. I've written probably more music on that guitar than any other guitar, because I used to write, I mean, not so, I guess I don't so much anymore, still write the metal stuff on acoustic guitar, but I used to write a lot of like stuff for DYSRHYTHMIA and just like my metal bands on acoustic.
Yeah.
At least that's just what I would just be carrying around the house while I was sitting on the couch watching TV.
Right.
I used to write a lot of songs while I was watching TV.
Yeah. That makes sense, though. I think that makes sense. I mean, you know, you're sitting around having something in your hand that you could just kind of noodle along on, you know, I mean.
Yeah. So yeah, that Takamine acoustic is one of my favorites. And then I recently bought a Gretsch guitar.
Okay.
Yeah, semi-hollow body Gretsch. And I bought that for VELDUNE because I kind of wanted that kind of Chris Isaac-y kind of hanging tone. So that's been really fun because I never had a guitar like that before. It's got the Bixby tremolo.
Yeah.
Low bar, whatever bridge on it. So that's been really fun. I like having, you know, different guitars kind of make me want to play a different way.
Yeah.
To bring out different sides of my playing, depending.
Yeah, so you like a little bit of variety. You're not a guitar snob then.
No. No. Yeah.
You know, you're not one of these guys who just like, I only play Gibson. You know, like.
No, like for instance, I have an SG and I have a Gibson SG. I have a Fender Strat. I like both. I'm not one of these like, you know, Gibson versus Fender guys. Like Fenders are great for some things. Gibsons are great for other things. They feel completely different. They sound completely different. And yeah, to me, there's no point in having like, you know, 20 Jackson guitars or something that really all sound the same.
Yeah.
You know.
Is there a go-to guitar when you're gonna you know, are there certain brands that are good for the death metal shit? Like what kind of guitars are you reaching for if you're gonna do the GORGUTS shit? Like you know, like what guitars have you found, you know, for playing extreme metal that really that really capture the sound you're looking for?
I should mention, yeah, I have there's this luthier and up in Quebec named Marc Chiquan, and
okay,
I have he's built me two guitars. And they're amazing. They're just incredible guitars. They sound amazing. They feel amazing. One is a 12-string electric guitar.
Okay.
Which is pretty unique. And then another one's just a 6-string kind of built in an SG kind of style. Yeah, that's the guitar I mainly use, you know, for GORGUTS. But before I got that SG, I used my Gibson SG a lot for GORGUTS, and people kind of would give me shit for it or just kind of make fun of me for some reason.
Yeah.
Mixing an SG for death metal, but I mean, those guitars sound heavy. I don't know. Maybe it just doesn't look very death metal or something, but
I feel like when I watch metal though, man, I feel like I see a lot of SGs though.
Yeah, I always think of like someone like Trevor from Obituary. He's always played Strats. You don't see many people playing Strats in death metal.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I don't really own any like super metal-y guitars right now. I kind of want to get, back when I was in high school and stuff, I had, a Charvel and an Ibanez and all those kind of.
Yeah, those were the go-to. I remember those being big back in my days too.
I traded all those guitars in over the years, but I kind of wish I still had. the Charvel. I kind of want to buy another like kind of more shredder kind of guitar soon, just to have one around. But
are there people that propose musical projects to you because you are somebody that likes to stay busy? Are there people that propose projects to you or ideas to you that you've turned down? Like has anybody post something to you where you're just like, I'm just not into that?
Occasionally someone will reach out and ask me if I want to usually play a solo on one of their songs or something, and I'm always open to that. Honestly, it's a nice way to make some extra money sometimes too. But it's also really fun for me usually to write a guitar solo over someone's song or to someone's song. So I've done a lot of that, but I do have to kind of like the music,
Yeah, you got to you got to somewhat feel it, right?
I do, yeah. In order to be convincing with what I write, I gotta like feel like I like the music. And yeah, there was one time, at least once, where years ago, where someone wrote to me and kind of name dropped a bunch of other people that were apparently going to be on the record, and they sent me a link to their stuff, and I just wasn't into it musically, so I just honestly I don't think I ever wrote back. I should have just wrote back, so I didn't like it, but I didn't.
Is there anybody that in a perfect world, that would have your mouth watering if they were to propose working with them? Is there anybody out there that would be like on a bucket list of people that you'd love to work with, like whether it can come to fruition or not? Is there anybody out there that you would just that you'd be over the moon to work with?
Sure. Usually when if someone asks that question, I tend to always think of like singer-songwriters that I really like.
Yeah.
Or singers in general. People like Bjork, for instance. She doesn't really have any guitar on her music. That's not really an instrument.
Yeah, she doesn't. You're right. Yeah,
which is fine, which is cool actually. But I always thought that'd be interesting, like to hear on at least one of her songs, like some wild kind of guitar kind of stuff. And I just think she's a really interesting singer and musician. So someone like that, or he's not alive anymore, but Scott Walker.
Okay.
Yeah, another kind of he went in a real avant-garde direction later in his later years. Who else? I don't know. Trying to think of like bands.
If you could have a conversation with Bjork, would you insinuate to her that she could use a little guitar in her music?
No, I would never want to tell her what to do. It's funny though, because she, I used to see her around here and there at death metal shows here in New York.
Yeah, she's a rocker chick. Yeah, she is.
She was, I think she was with that guy named Matthew Barney for a while, who's a visual artist, and I know he's like a big death metal fan, so I think he would, the two of them I would see it around a lot of death metal shows, which I always thought was cool.
Well, the premise of my show usually is, and my audience knows, that I'm always on here making the claim that I am a descendant of rock royalty, and I cling to the fact that I am the son of David Lee Roth. But that may or may not be true. We're trying to find that out. But when you look at me, do I look more maybe Luke LeMay? Maybe I should be making the claim that Luke's my father. I don't know. I've seen recent pictures of Luke, and I don't know. I might be looking more Luke LeMay with the hair than David Lee Roth.
Actually, it's a good. It really is a 50-50 blend, I think. Actually,
I've seen recent pictures of Luke, and I'm thinking, Jesus, man. I'm almost a dead ringer. I could be his doppelganger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oddly enough, though, man, the hair does come off, though. So there is that, Okay, so here's what we've learned. We don't know when we're going to get a new GORGUTS album, but we can find plenty of Kevin Hufnagel out there, though. You're around, and you won't say no, goddammit. If you want the guy to do a guitar solo, he can't say no. Well, he could if your music sucks, but
yeah, or if I just don't. I mean, usually I have the time, but sometimes I don't have. Yeah, sometimes people might catch me where I'm just don't have the time to.
Yeah,
but,
geez, leave him alone. He's not a guitar machine, for God's sakes. You know, let the guy have a little R&R once in a while.
No, but no, I mean, it's fun for me, so usually I'll do it. You know,
I just find it amazing, man. Though that you know. And I've told this to other people, just, you know, like people that can just be so creatively stimulated, man, you know, and I know you said, yeah, obviously you have times when, you know, and I think we all do, even the most creative of people have that time where they're just like, oh, I just want to decompress. I don't even want to think about playing the guitar, or I don't want to think about doing a podcast, or think about doing this, or think about that. But I mean, is that something that you've always been able to tap in, though? I mean, even from a young age, have you always needed like a creative outlets? And is it and have those outlets always been music? Are you into anything else that's creative? Paint? A lot of people paint or draw or write.
Yeah, you know, I in addition to music, I've dabbled in photography and
Okay,
drawing. I think every kid likes to draw. You know, I used to draw a lot, but yeah. I mean, to me, it's like it's also important to get away from music sometimes. For me too.
Yeah.
Like you said, like, you know, decompress, like go out to the woods, just kind of give yourself a break. That's important because sometimes you can really burn yourself out.
Yeah. I think your own headspace has to be right in order to create. You know, I mean, it's, you know, that just kind of goes without saying, but you know, I don't know, man. I mean, Jesus, man, you got a pretty padded resume, though. I looked on Wikipedia and I was like, wow, this guy has jumped on a lot of projects, man. Unbeknownst to me, I'm thinking about, geez, I'll go on and talk to him about GORGUTS and VELDUNE and VAURA. You know, that barely scratches the surface, man. I mean, Jesus.
Those are the main ones, but yeah, probably on the Wikipedia, there's a lot of the guest spot stuff.
A lot of them are, yeah. Admittedly, a lot of them are that, sure. But I mean, is it an honor when people call you up and ask you to be like a you know, like rip a guest guitar solo on something, though? Like, does it make you feel very proud, like, that people reach out to you? And who are the people that reach out to you? How do they find you usually? Do they find you through your solo work? Do they find you through GORGUTS? Who are the people that are reaching out to you? Like, do you ever ask them, like, how did you come across me?
I don't know if I really ask people how they come across me. Usually it's, I guess people usually contact me through my social media sites or something. And most of the time they're metal bands. And seems like most of the time they kind of, when they ask me to play solos, that they probably, I think they know me through the solos, you know, from the GORGUTS records.
Yeah.
Solos. So yeah. But I've played on some more pop stuff too.
Yeah.
Where I don't think they're familiar with that side of my playing. So I actually kind of wish I kind of wish more people from outside of metal would actually have me do guest spots.
So you like to branch out?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. I love playing, you know, shredding or whatever. Playing the metal solos is super fun. But yeah, this thing, it would be cool to do some get more opportunities where it's some other kinds of music, you know, too.
Well, listen, I mean, I am the heir to the throne as far as fantastic frontmen go. So, you know, as soon as I get my own project off the ground, I'll be tapping you, sir. As long as you can glam it up a little bit, you're gonna have to tap into those George Lynch type licks.
That's no problem.
I know it's no problem. But okay, so in closing, I just want to tell you, okay, the next time you talk to Luke, let's start chirping in his ear here. I mean, the clock is ticking. 6 years here, Kevin. People want a new GORGUTS record.
I want a new GORGUTS record.
I know you're ready to go. I know you're sitting home chomping at the bit.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not getting any younger. But
I know you could say that again. Well, listen, man, I could sit here and talk to you all day, man. I really appreciate you doing this, man, and being so generous with your time, man. It's been a blast talking to you, man. Hopefully we'll stay in touch, and you know, the next time, you know, you drop something new or the GORGUTS album comes out or whatever, you know, we'll do this again.
Great, thanks, Mark. Appreciate
it, Kevin. Thank you so much, buddy. Have a good one, buddy.
Sure. Okay,
later.
Bye-bye. See ya.
Folks, there he is, Kevin Hufnagel. I know him most from GORGUTS, legendary Canadian death metal band GORGUTS. But if you want to check out other stuff that he does that's in a different vein, check out VELDUNE. That's VELDUNE. Their last release was right here in 2022, not that long ago, self-titled VELDUNE. VAURA, VAURA, 2022, they put out Vista of Deviant Anatomies. And of course, you can go check him out on 2013. GORGUTS did Colored Sands, a fucking phenomenal album. 2016, Pleiades Dust. So go out and check out. And if you go to his Wikipedia page, you're going to find that he may be the second hardest working man in show business behind me. But the guy is a hard worker, man. I'll tell you that. He's got a wide array of work out there. You can find that guy on a lot of albums, and a phenomenal guitar player and a super cool guy. And I hope you guys enjoyed that episode of Pod Scum. And until next time, this is Rex Ruger telling you to take it easy and keep it sleazy.